Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to Talkin Movies. I am your host, the real Geno Reynolds. Today on the program, we're going to be talking about dogs. We have a doggy double feature. The first movie we're going to talk about is Sergeant Stubby, an American Hero. Based on a true story, a stray dog gets adopted by a soldier while he's in basic training for World War I. For his deeds of valor and bravery, Sergeant Stubby, which the dog finally gets named, is still recognized to this day as the most decorated dog in American history. You know, when it came to this movie, I never even saw a trailer. I never even heard of this movie until I saw a few images pop up online whenever I was looking to see what movies are coming out. And then the movie came around us, and I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go see it. But when I saw the images, it just kind of looked like one of those cheap, should have been straight to DVD animated movies. And like I said, that was just my first impression. Now, I'm one of those reviewers where if I have a first impression that's bad and then the movie turns out good, I'm actually happy that I was wrong. I love being wrong in that aspect. Well, when it comes to Sergeant Stubby, I was wrong. Me personally, I have a natural interest in World Wars One and Two. I've always just enjoyed seeing movies about them. They were my favorite part of history. I was never a big fan of school, but you know, I did enjoy the history lessons about World War One and World War Two, and so I've always had a natural interest in them. So I was at least curious going into this movie, especially hearing that this is based on a true story and then it's an animated film. So I was kind of curious how they were going to handle World War One in an animated form. And the movie's PG, so I wondered, you know, how far were they going to go with things, being that it's a war movie. And we'll talk about that in a bit. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is the animation style of this movie. There's actually two different animated styles. The first animation style is 3D animation, which you've seen in the pictures, and you know, now I've seen the trailer because after I saw the movie, I kind of looked one up just to see it, you know. And the human characters in this movie kind of remind me of Illumination movie characters. You know, they're kind of cartoony-ish type. They don't look like real humans, you know what I mean? It's just a very animated style, very cartoony look to them. And really, in this movie, it kind of works. You know, a lot of reviewers have complained that the characters just felt very light. They moved slow or moved light, like they were, you know, they didn't feel weighty, I guess is the, you know, like they were real humans. Well, you know, it didn't really bother me that much. Really, I mean, is it the greatest animation? No, but it's pretty good. Because really it was the story that was keeping me into it, more than anything. But then the second animation style, which is the style I really liked in this, it was this 2D animation that they used for different cutscenes, like narrated scenes where they were showing like where the soldiers were moving on maps, and you know, they were showing on these maps where the soldiers were taking over or losing ground. Just any type of transition scene, anytime they showed like TV footage and stuff like that, it was done in a 2D style, and I really like that. It just really, you know, took away from, you know, keeping everything the same. It kind of mixed things up a little bit for the style of the movie, and I really dug it. What this style really reminded me of, and granted, I've only played the demo of this game, but I really want to play the game pretty bad. There's a video game that I had a demo for on Xbox 360 called Valiant Hearts: The Great War, and some of the animation style this movie reminded me of that game, and also one of the characters in the game, his name was Emil, and I'll get to that character in a bit whenever I'm talking about the character he reminded me of. But I like this character in the game, and there was a character in the movie who really reminded me of him, so that was a nice little connection. They're both French soldiers, and we'll get into that in a bit. But let us talk about the characters. The animation of this movie's cool. There's really not much to say about it. The 3D's not special, but it's fine. The 2D stuff's really cool, though. The next thing I want to talk about is the characters. The first character is Robert Conroy, who is a real guy. He's voiced by Logan Lerman. He's basically the new soldier that's just got out of basic training that befriends this stray dog. They're in a parade and he sees a stray dog and he pulls a cookie out of his pocket and throws it to the dog. And of course, the dog's like, "Dude's got food. I'm following him, right?" So that's kind of how their friendship begins. And he's the main character of the story, and then you have Stubby, the dog. And as I just told you how they met, Stubby then starts to hang around the base and in his own way trains with the soldiers when they're doing exercises, going for runs, going under barbed wire, all that stuff. He's doing it along with them. And long story short, he kind of becomes the unofficial mascot of this army base, and then ends up finding a way to follow Robert as he leaves for war. Now, if you look up the real story, he kind of gets smuggled aboard and then still ends up being able to help and work with the group. But in this, he follows them onto a ship and finds a way to smuggle himself on. But he ends up becoming a valuable part of the Army's Yankee Division, which is this group that's training at the Army base. And a fun fact about the real Stubby, after he got back from war, for a time he became Georgetown's, the college, Hoya's mascot. They've had many mascots over the year, but he became the official mascot for a while, so I thought that was pretty cool. The next character is Margaret, who is Robert's sister. That's Helena Bonham Carter's part. She basically narrates all the cutscenes and kind of just keeps you informed of, okay, this is where we're going next. You don't even get to meet her on screen, which I was kind of surprised by that they didn't ever do that. But she does a really good job at narrating the whole story and keeping you interested in what's going on. She really makes you feel what her brother's communicating to you or to her through letters. She'll be reading parts of his letters and things like that. And I thought that she did a really good job at narrating the story. But my favorite character of the whole movie was a character by the name of Gaston Baptiste, and he was voiced by Gerard Depardieu. His character is one that reminded me of the character from Valiant Hearts that I mentioned just a bit ago, the video game. Was he based on a real person? Well, I can't really find anything on a real guy like this. I usually go to History vs. Hollywood, but they haven't done anything since that Clint Eastwood movie about the terrorists on the train, the 1517 or whatever it was called. So I couldn't really find anything on if this guy was a real guy or if he's just kind of an amalgamation of many French soldiers that were a part of these guys' lives, or Robert's and Stubby's life. His character is a family man, lover of life, friends, family, good food and wine. He reminded me a bit of Depardieu's role of Porthos from The Man in the Iron Mask, except for the whole womanizing thing. His character is the one that teaches the main character to respect the fear of war so he can overcome that fear. Because the main character is always saying, "Oh, you'd never seem scared or anything like that." He's like, "I'm more scared than you possibly know," but he goes, I laugh to fight that fear. And also a fun little note, Robert, Stubby, and Gaston ended up calling themselves the Three Musketeers, even did the whole all for one for all thing, which is kind of another fun Porthos connection. But he's by far the best character in the movie. When it came to handling the violence of war, I was really curious how this movie was going to do it, and I thought they handled it pretty well. They never show anyone get shot. Some people do get hit by a bomb hitting something in that, like the ground moving and hitting them, things like that. A few people do die in the movie, but it's nothing ever really graphic. And when it comes to the bad guys, when it comes to the Germans, they're the bad guys, of course, because it's World War One. Only once do they show one of their faces. So all the time they're wearing gas masks and things like that. So they're kind of a faceless enemy. But I mean, the movie really wants you to focus on there's 4 soldiers and the dog that they really want you to focus on. But when it came to handling violence, if this is a movie you wanted to show your kids, you could, because it's not overly violent. They do shoot guns. There is bombs. There is a scene where they shoot gas and things like that. But they don't show anyone like getting violently killed or anything. So it is a fairly safe movie that if you wanted to show your kids. And even though I will say that, after seeing the movie, I looked up some of the facts about it. A lot of the facts are changed, at least from what I could see. A lot of what they put in there was at least something like that happened. But there were some things they had to change, of course, because it is, a movie. But still, I think this would make a fun educational movie that you could show kids that, kids aren't going to be ready for real war movies. You know what I mean? But this is one that I would show my kids, and you could kind of slowly talk to them about, what war is. So yeah, the movie has a lot of fun, but it also has some scary moments and some sad moments. There's just a lot to this movie, and it really surprised me. I like the animation style, definitely the 2D stuff more than the 3D stuff, but it was fine. I really liked the story. It was very heartfelt, had some humor to it, and I really liked the characters. So, this is one that I would really recommend. Not everyone's going to like it, but I don't know. As someone that's into World War I and World War II stuff, I really enjoyed it. A lot of critics are saying, well, this story deserved better. Well, you know what? I would love to see a big budget, like full blown, PG-13 or R-rated movie about this. I would be cool with that too. But this is actually a really good take on it too, and it's also something that you could show your kids to show them that back then there was heroes too. So I would recommend this one, and I have to say, again, I loved being wrong about this in my first impression. The next movie we're going to talk about is Isle of Dogs. It finally came around us, and I was so happy, and I've been looking forward to seeing this one. Set in Japan, after the canine population comes down with a horrible sickness, the mayor of Megasaki City banishes all dogs to Trash Island, including his nephew Atari's bodyguard dog Spots, who was not even sick. Not happy with his uncle, Atari steals a small plane and flies to Trash Island to search for his dog. It is on the island that he meets a small group of dogs that end up helping him on his mission. The first thing I gotta say about Isle of Dogs is it is not for kids. I know it's an animated movie. It's a cool stop motion animated movie. But man, is it not for kids. I would not show my kids this yet. My kids are 8 and 10, and they are not ready for this movie. It's got a bit of a complicated storyline. It's got a lot of moving parts, and also there's adult themes such as conspiracy, violence, murder, possible mass murder, sex, death, politics. There's just a lot going on in this movie that I don't think kids would be ready for, and you'd be answering a lot of questions about that stuff. Plus, you're going to be having to answer a lot of questions of what did they say? Because get this, the movie is in Japanese. Now, sometimes there is a translator in scenes where you really need one, like say someone is talking on TV and they need to translate, like they have a translator, going over the television. But sometimes it's not. But if the movie isn't translated, the scenes and imagery will kind of tell you what's going on. So you always know what's going on. But I think a kid would have maybe a little trouble, when there's just Japanese talk going on and there's no subtitles. Anytime they show something that has Japanese lettering, they will put the English lettering next to it, so you know what's going on there. And like I said, if they're not translating it, they're at least showing you using a visual style that will explain, what is going on. I am curious that when this movie comes out on DVD or Blu-ray, that if it's going to have English subtitles to this Japanese speak. I'm really curious about that, and I'll probably have to check that out when it comes out. When it comes to the dogs, they communicate in English, and the movie even explains at the beginning that this movie is in Japanese, and we're going to translate some of it, but not all of it, and the dog's barking is in English. So, and you've kind of seen in the trailer where the kid's talking, where Atari is talking, and one of the dogs says, "I wish I could understand what he was saying." Well, that's basically how it is. He's a dog barking, and English is their language. Um, and I like that, the dogs talk like regular humans. They talk about weird stuff and gossip and everything else. And there's one character that ends up in the end admitting, yeah, I really like gossip, because a lot of the times he's saying, did you hear about blankety blank? Did you hear about blankety blank? And that happens a lot. And I really like that they were just kind of regular characters, and they were put on a somewhat spectacular mission. The main story involves the dog Chief, which is voiced by Bryan Cranston. He has to learn to trust Atari and eventually help him find his dog Spots. There's a group of dogs, and all of them but Bryan Cranston were household pets, and he was a stray. So of course, he has issues trusting people and where his next meal is going to come from and everything, where all these housebroken dogs, while they're all leaders together, Cranston's character always seems to, want to be, the head guy because he's been through more, So he's got the main story. There's another story going on about a foreign exchange student that thinks the mayor has purposely made the dog sick because he and his family have a history of hating dogs. And I don't really want to get into that because it explains it the first in the movie, and I'll leave that to you. If you see the movie, you can learn what the history is and why this guy has a deep hatred for dogs. So I'll leave that one for you guys to see. The voice cast in this movie is amazing, and long story short, everyone brings their A game here, given their character, their own unique personality. I mean, they all do a great job just making you feel that they are these talking dogs. I know it's weird that we're watching a stop motion animated movie, but they all just really get you invested, and some have bigger parts than others, like characters that, there's a ton of people that in this movie, and some are focused on more than others, like Scarlett Johansson's barely in the movie, but she does come kind of important. Like Bill Murray does a great job. Jeff Goldblum's great. I love Bryan Cranston in this. There's all sorts of people and you'll recognize voices all throughout, and it's like, hey, that's so-and-so. That's kind of cool. So yeah, everyone does a great job at making their character their own. I really enjoyed the voice cast. The visuals of this movie is amazing. Again, it's stop motion animation. It will remind you a lot of Wes Anderson's other stop motion movie, Fantastic Mr. Fox. I think this one's better. Of course, it's newer and there's better equipment and everything else. So I mean, of course they've improved, but yeah, the animation in this, just all the little things they do, like they show maggots moving on garbage, and when they're fighting, it's like cotton moving, and you see legs and stuff coming out. It looks like a Looney Tunes cartoon when they fight and things like that. So all the animation I thought was really cool. And they did a lot, like the last movie we just talked about, they did a lot of stuff where they'd use 2D animation as well, when they'd show TVs and things like that. And I thought that was really neat that it had a mixture of, it wasn't just stop motion. They used other forms of animation as well, and it worked really well. Look, long story short, this movie, has heartwarming characters and a heartwarming story. It's fun and funny when it can be, but it knows when it needs to be a little dark and dramatic at other times. And it's one of those movies that will keep your interest to the end. Again, I warn you that it's probably not for kids. I'm not saying kids couldn't enjoy it, but a lot of what's going on in this movie is kind of adult. So just be warned that if you do show your kids this, I gave you the warning. So anyway, that's going to be all for the Doggie double feature of reviews here. Until next time, I am the real Geno Reynolds. I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Talkin Movies. See you later.